Please be seated. I'm not one who's prone to worrying too much, but even I've been worrying a lot. It's a year of constant worry. Are the kids falling behind at school? Will I still have a job? Is the very fabric of our nation unraveling? And that's leaving aside the constant health worries. Is this runny nose something more than just allergies? Am I running a fever? Was I exposed to somebody with the virus? And then there are the worries about a loved one getting sick. Or worse yet, causing a loved one to get sick, to get COVID. All of these worries are weighing us down and stressing us out. All of these unknown and ambiguous worries are just getting to us to a place of being totally worn out and exhausted. Fatigued by COVID protocols and the constant worry, left wondering when we'll finally get a break from it all. We keep speculating if there's much of a future left for us at all. Of course, this is not the first time that a whole nation has felt this way, or even this nation. Just look back at the first reading in today's gospel from the Hebrew Bible. The prophet Isaiah is speaking to a tired, fatigued, and weary people who had serious trouble imagining a new future. Their situation was perhaps more dire than ours. Moving back to a destroyed capital and society after 70 years of exile and foreign domination. And part of Isaiah's job, his creative work, was to spark their imagination, to attempt to do the seemingly impossible, an exhausting work of starting over again and rebuilding, literally stone upon stone. He knew that the people couldn't possibly muster enough energy and likely just wanted to give up. And so he wrote some inspirational and loving words. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with the wings like eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Beautiful lyrics, of course, famous to our ears in that hymn on eagle's wings that we'll get to hear a little bit later. Weariness, of course, is not unique to those ancient Israelites. We're in the same boat, moving forward beyond our current worries to work joyfully to create a new future that we can't imagine requires more strength than we can muster. Simply said, it's beyond what we humans hold within ourselves to accomplish. Perhaps simply acknowledging this reality is the first step in finally finding relief from all of the worries and anxieties that plague us. Take a breath and let that sink in. We can't do it by ourselves. We can't do it by ourselves. And we're not alone. We don't have to do it by ourselves. Yes, we're struggling to imagine what our future holds and when it will finally emerge. Some might even be wondering if it'll emerge. And the prophet shares this powerful promise that God's continual creative work, with its mysterious yet life-giving power, is present and will heal us. And all we have to do is to wait upon the Lord. But we're tired of waiting, aren't we? Tired of waiting. What does it mean to wait on the Lord anyway? Well, I think it starts in admitting that we're not alone. And knowing that we don't have to be alone. Just sensing that God is present with us. Worry and anxiety have a way of isolating us, making us feel unseen and alone. The first step to waiting on the Lord is to stop from all your private worrying and to pause and to look for God. And that's what prayer really is. Letting ourselves be seen by our Creator, who knows us intimately as a mother and loves us deeply. When we allow ourselves to be seen by the eyes of our beloved Creator, then we can see ourselves for more than the weary worry that we carry and the anxiety about health. The truth is, we often don't see ourselves. We don't acknowledge the pain or the shame that we're carrying. It's the most important thing we can do, but we don't stop to notice. We don't want to notice because we're afraid. We're scared of what we'll see. We're afraid of feeling inadequate and small. But this fear is totally ungrounded. For it is in being seen and noticed that we finally come into our being. And if we don't stop, we'll discover too late that we've been quietly killing ourselves all the while, that we're choosing death over life. So we need to stop and pay attention. Yes, we may be wearing masks, but they're not over our eyes. We do have clear vision to stop and to see. Maybe if our glasses are a little foggy, nonetheless. So stop and pay attention to your feelings, because how we deal with our inner world drives everything. Every aspect of how we love and how we live, how we parent, and how we lead. The conventional view of emotions as good or bad, positive or negative, is far too rigid. And rigidity in the face of life's complexity is toxic. We need greater levels of emotional agility for true resilience, and to accept that abundant life that Jesus offers us. A life truly worth living begins when we see ourselves and others for who they are. I kind of think that's what's going on in this seemingly insignificant story that Mark tells. Still early in Jesus' account, his account of Jesus' life and ministry, Mark tells the story of the healing of a woman, unnamed except that she is identified as Peter's mother-in-law. This story is so intimate, kind of almost private. You may even wonder why Mark includes it and tells it. But though it is brief, and it is far from simple. Indeed, Mark's construction of the scene, and particularly the detail that once recovered, the woman serves the male disciples, has been a source of frustration to many of us as it's functioned across centuries to reinforce the notion that the woman's role is not to lead but to serve. Simply not true. But that agitation misses the whole point of this story. Jesus is not trying to create subservience. Jesus wasn't really a sexist in this account, but is rather bestowing honor upon this woman. In the ancient world, it was a great honor to welcome people into your home. Her service is an opportunity for her to be seen, acknowledged, for her to be seen and honored. And I think that's what true healing is about. Lasting healing, enduring healing. And this unnamed woman will get sick again and again. And one day she'll die. But in being seen and acknowledged, she's no longer alone. She's given great dignity. And perhaps the fact that she's not named is also telling. Perhaps it allows us to better identify with her. I mean, how many of us are sick with anxiety, depression, and loneliness? How many of us are emotionally been laid up in bed with a fever like Simon Peter's mother-in-law? How many of us long to be seen for who we really are? And yet we're afraid what we'll see, what others will see in us, in our own vulnerability, our brokenness, and our fragility. Life's beauty, however, life's beauty is inseparable from life's fragility. We are young until we're not. We walk down the streets feeling powerful and sexy until one day we realize that we're unseen. We nag our children and one day realize that There is silence where that child once was, now making his or own way out in the world. We are healthy until a diagnosis brings us to our knees. The only certainty is uncertainty. And yet we're not navigating this frailty successfully or sustainably. We are isolating ourselves and incessantly worrying, taking our anxiety to heightened levels that make it impossible to live, move, or have our being. And that's not what God's hope is for us. God wants us to have an abundant life of joy, of possibility, of connection. Yes, we do have to be concerned about health in this current pandemic and how to keep each other healthy. But health and healing are more than just washing our hands or wearing masks or keeping socially distant. Health and healing begin when we stop and pay attention to the one who can heal us. When we stop and pay attention to one another. When we look into the eyes of another, wearing a mask or not, from 6 or 10 feet or not, and see that they're there and they're not alone. This morning, Jesus is here with us, and we're being asked to find healing, and it starts with being seen. We need first to see ourselves. We need to acknowledge and honor those feelings we wish we didn't have. We can't ignore or stuff them or run from them any longer. So you see, God is standing by, hovering there, offering to strengthen and support us. God is ready to raise us up, to resurrect us, and to give us new and abundant life. But that's only possible if we're willing to let go of our old lives, our own old habits of worrying and hand-wringing and cutting ourselves off from the community. Research on emotional suppression shows that when emotions are pushed aside or ignored, they don't go away. They only get stronger. Psychologists call this amplification. It's like the remnants of last year's Girl Scout cookies that you hid, or maybe this year, 2 years in the past, that you hid back in the freezer, but recently rediscovered. And the more you try and ignore them, the greater their hold is on you. They take hold of your imagination, even when you try and push it away. They even come to you in your dreams. We might think we're in control of unwanted emotions when we ignore them, but the fact is they're in control of us. Internal pain always comes out. Always. And who pays the price? We do. Our children do. Our colleagues do. Our communities do. When we push aside normal emotions to embrace a false positivity, we lose our capacity to develop skills to deal with the world as it is, not as we wish it were. When I talk to people in grief, or perhaps I'm failing in grief myself, people in emotional distress, we often say we don't want to feel that way anymore, that we're tired of it, exhausted. There doesn't seem to be a way out, no hope. And they and I begin to say things like, I don't want to try anymore because I just don't want to feel disappointed. Or, I just want this feeling to go away. That's understandable. But those are not sustainable goals. What we're describing are the goals of dead people. Only dead people never get unwanted or inconvenienced by their feelings. Only dead people never get stressed, never get brokenhearted, never experience the disappointment that comes with trying and failing. Tough emotions are part of our contract with life. You don't get to have a meaningful career or raise a family or leave the world a better place without stress and discomfort. Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful and abundant life. And so when Jesus sees this unnamed woman, he invites her to see herself in her own fragility. And when she does, she can begin to embrace the invitation to find health and wholeness and life despite the fear and the pain. She realizes that hiding from her feelings and hiding in bed is not the answer. Jesus sees her, and she's empowered to get up, to encounter life again. That's what it means to wait upon the Lord, to be basking ourselves in God's presence, to find the power of God's delight in us as God's own children. You all know, if you have children, how delightful they are, even because of their limitations, even when they need us. That's what makes them ours. God created us with limitations so that we would constantly be looking for God's help. And sometimes, like teenagers, we think we can just do it ourselves. And then we get ourselves in a world of trouble. But Jesus is inviting us to experience God's full presence. Jesus is here with us today. And he's using your eyes and my eyes to see ourselves and to see each other. He's calling us to embrace the fullness of our fragility and our broken humanity. Yeah, it's fragile, but it's beautiful. When we accept being seen, then we begin to find healing. When we're healed, then we feel the call to be resurrected, to start life again, to dream of the impossible, and to make it happen with God's help. To make our lives and our families and our communities and our world a better place. No longer can we turn a blind eye to the dark stuff of our lives. When we acknowledge the dark feelings, without stuffing them or ignoring them or running from them, then we can be released from them. Then we find healing when we actually see ourselves. So this morning I want to say that I see you. I see you in all of your brokenness and fragility. And what I see is a child of God. Beautiful, created to be delightful for your own delight, and more importantly, for God's delight. God is in the midst of us this morning. God is healing us. God is asking us to let the worry go, to be freed from anxiety. All we have to do is look to God, because God is restoring us to an amazing future that's only possible with God's resurrecting power. So this morning, let go of your worries and the things that make you weary and fatigued, and let God's Spirit lift you up with eagle's wings, and may you run and not grow weary. Amen.